What if the most dangerous lie a man could believe sounds more like a motivational quote? You're only worth what you can get, not what you can give, not what you mean to others, not even what you stand for as far as your values, but what you can get, whether it's sex or status or admiration or even power. It sounds noble at first, doesn't it? Like, it sounds like you got drive, like you have discipline and ambition, all wrapped up in confidence and bravado. You work hard, you chase your goals, and you get what you deserve, right? But underneath that glittering exterior is a belief that is so corrosive, so quietly vicious that it's sabotaging men from the inside out. And the worst part, it's not just in toxic subcultures or extreme ideologies. It's actually gone mainstream. It's in the dating advice that we listen to. It's in the hustle culture that we celebrate. It's in the locker room talk that we listen to, the TikTok reels, the career podcasts, and yes, even in the stories where we cheer in the movies. It shows up when boys are told to man up, and when failure means you're invisible, and when men equate their entire sense of self to what they've acquired. See, that's how the lie spreads quietly and culturally through affirmation and through applause, right? But but it doesn't stay quiet forever. See, eventually it breaks us. And so today we're going to dismantle this lie, not with shame, not with outrage, not with anger, but with truth. Because this lie is not just untrue. It's actually at the very core dehumanizing. And when we internalize it, we don't live, but instead we just perform. We perform confidence and instead of actually building it truthfully. We perform dominance instead of learning what intimacy looks like. We perform connection through conquest instead of cultivating it. And little by little, we begin to experience a hollowing out from our insides. And the most visible example of this is in the incel culture that we've been considering in these series. But this isn't just about incels. This lie actually lives in boardrooms and in church pews and on dating apps and in quiet homes where men are drowning in inadequacy because they're not getting enough of whatever they're supposed to be getting enough of. And that's where we're going to begin. So we're not going to begin with judgment, but with honesty. Because every man at some point faces the ache of feeling like he isn't enough. And when that ache collides with this lie, it bursts forth performance. Performance that says something like, if I just make more money, right? Or if I can just give a bit more admiration, or even get that admiration, if I can just win some more approval, then maybe I will finally be worthy. But that pursuit never ends because there's no enough in a system built on scarcity of self. And that's the cost. You chase and you chase, and even when you get the thing you were chasing, whether it's the girl or the gig or the glory, you still feel empty because what you really wanted wasn't the thing per se. It was the feeling, the sense of being enough, and feelings can't be bought. They can only be lived. And that's why this conversation matters. Because when men tie their worth to what they can get, when they reduce their life to a series of transactions, they see love as something you have to earn, or validation as something that you have to win, and identity as something external, always out there and never here within. And what happens when you live that way long enough? Well, you burn out. You break down. You lose touch with your real self. You you become an actor in your own life. Have you have you ever watched a man who doesn't believe that he's inherently worthy? Have you ever watched this kind of a man walk into a room? He he may smile, but you notice his smile doesn't ever reach his eyes. He may throw a couple of jokes, but they're rehearsed, right? He connects, but only in ways that make him look strong or impressive or capable. But the reality is it's not real. It's a survival tactic, right? It's auditioning. It's hollow. It just rings hollow. And yet we reward this kind of performance every day. We we like the posts, right? We applaud the hustle. We envy the man with power, even when we know that he's miserable inside as well. We we pursue all those things, but admiration is not the same thing as intimacy. And getting is not the same thing as being. So let's take it back just a bit. Let's actually go way back. Let's go way back to childhood. A boy gets rejected by a crush, and someone tells him to toughen up. Another boy cries after losing a game and gets mocked. Another boy hears his father saying, crying makes you weak. And just like that, the message lands. You are what you can get. And if you can't get it, you're going to amount to nothing. And so they grow up and they start collecting, just like we taught them how to do so. They may not be collecting toys anymore per se, but that morphs and they start collecting trophies, right? Or titles, or cars, or compliments, or even clout. And all this just to prove something. But here's the catch. You can't outrun a lie when you've let it live inside of you. You see, no matter how much you collect and gather and collate, you'll never feel whole if you're performing worth instead of actually living your worth. So, what's the alternative? It's pretty radical, actually. It's countercultural and it's deeply human. The alternative is you could stop performing and instead start being. Because the moment a man lives from his values instead of his vanities, the moment he builds connection instead of a conquest, the moment that he chooses to align his life with integrity instead of an image that he's trying to purport, that's the moment that he comes home to himself. And make no mistake about it, coming home to yourself after years of performance, it feels like you're detoxing from an addiction. It's not easy. There there are withdrawal symptoms that accompany it. You'll ache for the validation that you once were chasing. But something deeper waits for you on the other side. Something that you can't earn, something that you cannot buy, something that no one else can give or take away for that matter. And that something is you. And the way home, it starts with two significant key anchors. The one is integrity. And integrity for me is that alignment between your inner values and your outer actions. And the second pillar is intimacy. Not romance, not sexuality, but The act of letting yourself be courageously seen for who you truly are. Intimacy, one of the easiest ways I describe it is intimacy. See the parts that aren't polished. See the parts that ache and are painful. See the man underneath the mask that I might be wearing. Because what this lie destroys most isn't ambition or drive. No, it destroys belonging. At the very heart of it, this lie that we're dealing with destroys belonging. When your worth is tied to being impressive, you'll never feel safe enough to be vulnerable. And when you can't be vulnerable, you cannot be known. And if you're never truly known, you'll never truly feel loved. And that's the real tragedy, not just loneliness, but unbelonging, if you will. And it doesn't affect men alone. It fractures relationships and families and communities as well. When men don't know how to be, only how to achieve, intimacy then becomes quite impossible and inaccessible. You show up in your marriage, but only with a mask. You show up for your children, but only as a provider. And you show up in friendships, but only when you're winning. And all along, what you crave the most was being safe and being loved. And that all this while stays out of reach, because you can't be loved if no one sees the real and true you. But there's another way, and it starts small. It's not flashy, it's not sexy, it might not get applause from those around you. But what it will do is it will help you to rebuild your soul. It looks like telling the truth when it would be easier to impress those that you want to impress instead. It looks like choosing presence over performance. It looks like letting a friend see your disappointment without turning it into a punchline. And most of all, it looks like acting in alignment with your values even when it costs you dearly. See, that is integrity. And it's the first brick that you're building in this bridge back to yourself. Because you were never supposed to prove your worth. You see, your worth, you were supposed to actually live it and experience it and be in it and rest in it. So let's talk about the emotional hangover a little bit more of this performance that we are addressing. You know the feeling, right? When you leave a date or a party or a job interview and you just collapse. Not physically per se, but more so emotionally, because you weren't really there. Your body was there. You showed up. Your smile showed up. Your curated persona or your personality showed up in the way you wanted to be seen. But you, like the unfiltered you, the wholly unpolished you, the version of you that not many people see, that one never made it to the door or even into the room. And you spent the entire time auditioning and managing perceptions and saying the right thing and reading the room and cracking the joke at the right moment, and all this while just wearing the mask. And when it's over, you don't feel proud. You actually feel quite empty. And so you begin wondering, did they actually even like me? Or did they just like the version of me that I performed? That emptiness, that emptiness is not weakness. It's not failure, and it's not social anxiety. It's not because you're bad at connecting. It's more so, it's a signal. It's a red flag from your soul saying, this costume that I've been wearing, it doesn't fit anymore. This mask, it's not the right fit anymore. But taking off the costume, the mask, it's terrifying because when you've lived your whole life in performance mode, well, then who are you without it? What's left when the applause stops? The lie is going to tell you that nothing is left. The lie says something like, you were only lovable because you were impressive. You're only respected because you never flinched. Or you're only wanted because you were dominant. And that's why so many men keep the costume and the mask on, even when it's killing them. Because the risk of being real feels more dangerous than the pain of being fake. But what if it isn't? What if staying in performance mode is at the actual danger that you're presently in? Because here's the cost of never being seen. Even when someone loves you, you're still going to struggle to believe that they're loving the real you. Are they just loving the presentation, the fake? Because deep down, you'll always wonder, would they still love me if I lost everything that makes me impressive? And if you don't let anyone see the unfiltered version of you, you'll never truly feel safe. You'll never truly feel rest. You'll never fully trust love because you'll think it was just the mask that earned that love. But real love, like lasting love, like the love that heals, it doesn't attach to performance. It instead anchors to presence, being in that moment. It says, I see you, not just what you do, not just what you bring, but I see the real you and I'm staying. But you can't receive that kind of love until you stop hiding, until you stop leading with that, what can you get, and start living instead from what you already are. That's the path of intimacy. So let's pause here just a moment and reframe that word, intimacy, because intimacy gets, in my perspective, so misused. So intimacy for me, it's not just romantic. It might include romance, but yes, it's not only romantic. It's not inherently sexual, even though it may include that. It's not soft music and vulnerable pillow talk, the stereotype that usually attaches to that word. Intimacy is intimacy. That's how I describe it. Intimacy. It's allowing someone to see the parts of you that aren't curated or always accessible, the parts that ache, the parts that are contradictory, the parts that make you human. And that kind of seeing, it doesn't just feel good, it's actually healing. Because when someone sees the you that you've always been afraid to show, and when they don't leave, even after they've seen that part of you, something inside of you shifts and you realize, I'm not too much. I'm not too broken. I'm not only worthy when I'm winning. That's the beginning of coming home to yourself, giving yourself permission to be who you are and not having to apologize for it. But here's the truth that not many will admit. Not everyone is going to stay when you stop performing. Some people are addicted to the mask that you wear. They loved the curated you, the polished version of you, the you that made them feel good without ever asking for depth. And so when the mask comes off, they leave. And that feels like proof that the lie was right all along. But it's not proof. It's it's more a pruning. It's the necessary loss that makes space for real connection. Because every person who every person who walks away when you were real was actually never capable of loving the real you to begin with. And that's not your failure. That's their limitation. So so let them go. Let them go without resentment, but also without apology. Because when your worth is no longer up for negotiation, your circle may shrink, but your soul expands. It flourishes. It becomes amazing. You'll begin to find that people who don't flinch at your fear and who sit with you in your sorrow and who stay even when you're messy and when you're unsure and when you're unfiltered. You'll find those people who don't love you in spite of your vulnerability, but they love you because of your vulnerability. But you won't find them if you're still performing. You cannot perform real relationships if you're still relating through your mask. You can't be loved for who you are if you keep pretending to be who you're not. And this isn't just emotional. It's actually quite neurological. It's somatic. Your body, it knows the difference between performing and belonging. You see, in performance mode, your body stays in alert mode, right? There's a tight jaw, or there's a shallow breathing, or the braced shoulders. But in presence, your nervous system finally exhales and your muscles soften and your breath gets deeper and you land in yourself. And from that place, everything begins to change. You listen differently and you love differently and you connect differently because you're no longer trying to get something or to get someone to like you. Instead, you're letting them see you as you are and trusting that that is enough. Because that's intimacy. And even when rejection happens, as it inevitably does, it doesn't destroy you. Why is this? Listen carefully, because I know so many struggle in this rejection piece. It's because rejection no longer erases who you are. That's one of the deepest wounds that men carry under this lie, when they believe that rejection is the same as worthlessness. If someone doesn't want me, I must be lacking, is how the story goes. If I was more attractive or more dominant or more successful, or then they would have chosen me. And so every no becomes a confirmation. See, you say, I wasn't enough all along. But what if rejection is not an erasing of oneself? What if it's just information? What if it means nothing about your worth and everything about what compatibility could look like? Think of it this way. Have you ever walked from someone amazing, not because they lacked anything, but just because the fit wasn't quite there? That wasn't an indictment on that person. It was more just discernment on your part. And in the same way, it's also true when it's reversed. But if you believe that your worth is defined by what you get, then every rejection is a knife to your identity. It's not just disappointment, it's utter devastation, isn't it? And so you start avoiding risk and you withdraw and you isolate. Or worse, You contort yourself, you try harder, you say the right things, and you play the part. You become a people pleaser and you contort yourself into something that you're not. You offer yourself up in increasingly inauthentic ways, hoping that if you can just get someone to choose you, maybe then you'll believe that you're worth choosing. But let me say this clearly, my dear listener. Listen up here. You're already worthwhile choosing, and you don't need a, a partner or applause or performance or metrics to prove that you were worthwhile all along. You just need to live like it, because here's the secret that no one tells you. When you start living like your worth is settled, when you stop bargaining for your worth, your entire energy changes. You stop extracting from others and you start offering from yourself to others. You stop manipulating outcomes and instead you start telling the truth. You stop asking, how do I get them to like me? And instead you start asking, what kind of connection do I want to build? And that's how integrity re-enters the room. Not, not as a moral code, not as a set of rules, but as a structure that lets your soul breathe. Because when your outer actions match your inner values, you can finally rest. You don't have to check your story. You don't have to see your progression. You can just be. There's no more managing of impressions. There's no more pretending. There's no more chasing love that you were trying to earn, but you can just be. And here's the irony. That's the very thing, when you just be, that actually draws people to you. It's not the mask. It's not the hustle. It's not the curated strength that you're presenting. But the man who is just there, who's honest, who's grounded, and who's present, that's who people remember. That's who people trust. That's who people want to be around. That's the thing that's going to start drawing others to you. And when they ask you, what changed? You can smile and say, I stopped trying to get, and I instead started learning how to be. So let's take this one level deeper, shall we? Because once you begin living from presence instead of performance, something unexpected begins to happen. The urgency begins to fade. That frantic, buzzing need to prove yourself, it starts to dissolve. And the way that you move through the world, it begins to soften, not into weakness, but into wholeness. And so you're no longer hustling for scraps of approval, right? You begin to feel ground underneath, and it feels solid. You remember what it's like to breathe deeply and to rest in that breath. And more importantly, you begin to see others more clearly around you as well. Because when you're no longer consumed with earning value from others, you stop projecting that value system onto others as well. The woman across the table, she's not a mirror to validate your desirability, is she? She's not a test that you have to pass, and she's not a prize that you are trying to win. She is a person, a fellow person like you, who is complex as well, and sacred and flawed and real. And for the first time in a long time, you might actually see her, not just your own reflection in her eyes, but you can actually see her for who she is. And that alone shifts everything. Because now connection becomes mutual, not transactional, not one-sided, and definitely not a conquest. You're no longer trying to impress your way into belonging. No, you're actually showing up already. You're showing up in your wholeness. You're offering connection because you want it, not because you need it to confirm your sense of worth. This shift is subtle, but it's revolutionary. And let's be honest, it's rare. Most people are still performing. They're still trying to extract their self-worth through the eyes of others around them. They're still hoping that if they just get one more like, right, or one more date, one more win, they'll finally arrive at that desired place of feeling whole. But arrival never comes when you're chasing it, especially outside of yourself. Therein is a trap. The deeper you go into performance and believe that lie, the more disconnected you become from the very thing that you're pursuing, that you are chasing, and that is intimacy and respect and love. You think you're getting closer, but really you're just becoming more isolated, because performance, by definition, it requires a stage, doesn't it? And the stage always creates distance. Distance between you and distance between the audience. And that's the heart of loneliness that so many men are feeling. That even when they're surrounded by success, even when they're admired, and even when they're winning, there's a private ache that says they don't actually know me. And if they did, would they really stay? That ache is what drives the performance harder, until the mask becomes the only version of yourself, to the extent that you don't even recognize you're wearing a mask. But here's the miracle of starting to live from truth. You begin to remember who you were before the performance took over. And then you remember the boy who laughed without needing to be liked. You remember the boy who cried without shame. You remember the boy who wanted to experience connection more than conquest. He's still in there. He actually never left. He just got buried under layers of shoulds and scripts and survival and performance. But he's been there under all that, waiting. And so as you start letting go of the lie, and as you start peeling back the armor, one honest breath at a time, this boy begins to come forward. And with him comes something really sacred. Self-trust. Not bravado, not arrogance, not an empty confidence that's built on external wins, but a real, rooted, quiet sense of self-trust, the kind that allows you to say something like, I know who I am, even when no one's watching. Or, I don't have to be impressive to be valuable. Or, I don't need to earn love by erasing myself. That kind of man is dangerous to the lie that we've been dismantling, because he can't be manipulated by the lie anymore. He doesn't need to get to feel alive. He is alive. He is rooted and grounded in his aliveness. And that life that's rooted in integrity and intimacy is what begins to ripple outward. It's not just personal, it actually becomes generational. Because when a man heals this wound in himself, he stops passing it on. He stops he stops raising sons who believe that they have to dominate to be worthy. He he stops modeling relationships that are based on approval instead of authenticity. And he stops holding his friends to standards of toughness that don't allow tenderness. He starts building spaces where men can be soft and strong, whole and hurting, and real and received. And that's what we call legacy, like a legacy worth having. Not your resume, not your followers, not your net worth, but the rooms that you make safer just by being the real you. And it doesn't require perfection. It just starts with one decision. I will no longer measure my worth by what I can get. And that decision, it rewires everything. It changes how you show up in your friendship. You you stop being the guy who's always fine and you start telling the truth. You stop waiting for someone to ask, and instead you begin reaching out first. You stop performing um, and trying to offer value through performing, and you start instead offering presence. You show up tired, maybe honest, unpolished, unfiltered, and find that the right people didn't need you to be shiny. They just needed you to be there. And you also begin to receive differently. Compliments don't feel suspicious anymore. Affection doesn't trigger anxiety. Help doesn't make you feel like a burden. And why is this? Because you've stopped believing that you have to earn every good thing that comes your way. And you've started trusting that you're allowed to receive just because you exist. And that's the shift from extraction to expression, from proving yourself to just being present, from feeling like you have to conquer to instead connecting. And here's the best part. When you stop performing and you start living from your real true self, the people who resonate with you, with that version of you, they're the ones who actually fit. You don't have to manage their perception. You don't have to keep a performance going. You can exhale, and in that space where you don't have to be impressive or to be loved, healing begins. And it's not always a fast progression in that healing. It's not always linear. And yes, it can feel lonely at times as well too. But loneliness in authenticity is far more nourishing than popularity in the performance mode. Because at least the loneliness is real and you can feel it. And in its realness, it makes space for something true to enter. That's the paradox. When you live from truth, it narrows the field, but it deepens the roots. Does that make sense? You may lose the crowds, but you you gain kinship. You may lose your status, but you regain your soul back. You may lose surface level attention, but you gain safety and safe spaces. And safety is what allows love to, to last. Because love, it doesn't flourish, it cannot flourish in performance mode. It dies in transaction. It withers under the impression management, right? It fades in constant comparison. But where it grows slowly and stubbornly and beautifully in the soil of integrity and intimacy. So if you're looking for connection that actually lasts, you don't need a new pickup line. You don't need a better job or a stronger jawline. You need a homecoming. A homecoming back to yourself and back to your values, back to your unshakable sense of worth. And then from there, connection becomes possible. Not as something to get, but as something that you already carry. So let's bring this all the way home, shall we? I appreciate you sticking with me this length, but let's get to the good part, because while the lie we've been unpacking may seem simple, and the lie being you're only worth what you can get in life, its impact is anything but simple. It weaves its way into how you talk to yourself, especially how you show up on dates, how you respond to failure in your life, and how you interpret silence, how you treat others, especially those who can't give anything to you in return. And unless it's named, it continues running quietly in the background, shaping the entire landscape of your emotional life. So here's what we reclaim right here and now, if you're willing. And that's this: your worth is not a scoreboard. Your soul is not a commodity. Your masculinity is not a performance. You are allowed to be whole and still growing. You are allowed to be soft and still strong. You're allowed to be seen and not be impressive. You are allowed to rest, and you're allowed to receive, and you're allowed to ask for help without it meaning that you failed or that you are a failure. And most of all, you are allowed to be loved for who you are and not necessarily for what you can get. Because let's be honest, so many of us were taught to live in pursuit, to believe we'd be okay once we had the attention, the money, the partner, the admiration. But even when we got some of it, it didn't stick. It didn't satisfy it. It didn't anchor us. Because the thing we were really searching for wasn't out there. Instead, it was in here, in the quiet place inside that asks, can I be worthy without needing to be chosen? Can I be loved when I have nothing to offer but my presence? Can I belong even when I don't fit the mold? These questions, they can be terrifying questions, but they're also quite freeing as well, because the answer is yes. Yes to all of the above. Yes, you can be loved without performing. Yes, you can be worthy without proving yourself. Yes, you can build a life that feels good on the inside, even if no one outside is there to applaud or or to acknowledge it. And it starts today. It starts in this moment if you are willing. Not when you fix yourself, not when you earn enough, not when you feel fully confident finally, but right now, in this moment, if you choose it, with one decision to stop living the lie and instead to start building from within this truth. And that truth is this: integrity. When your actions reflect your values, is more powerful than admiration. And intimacy, the willingness and the courage to let yourself be seen, is more sustaining than conquest. And presence, or the courage to be fully here in this moment, is more healing than any performance could ever be. So, my dear listener, here's your invitation in this moment. Don't chase being chosen. Instead, choose yourself. Choose to tell the truth, especially when it's vulnerable to do so. Choose to rest even when hustle is screaming louder for you. Choose to offer connection even when you fear rejection. Choose to see others not as validation of you, but as fellow humans who are also learning how to be. And then from that place, build. Build friendships that hold space and not just stories. Build love that honors dignity, not just your resume. Build a life where you're allowed to be a full, messy, brilliant human being who doesn't have to get anything to be enough. Because enough is what you already are. And so, to every man listening, wherever you find yourself on this journey that we're on, whether you're still deep in performance, whether you've been numbing the ache with distractions, whether you're only now realizing how far this lie has reached, there is no shame here. No shame. Just a quiet, steady voice is calling you back to your breath, back to your body, back to being the boy that you once were, who didn't need to get anything or to have to perform, just to be full of wonder. Back to the man that you are becoming, the one who doesn't need to conquer to feel powerful, the one who doesn't need to be chosen to know that he's worthy, the one who doesn't measure his value in victories, but in integrity and intimacy that's lived out daily. That man, he's a threat to this system that performance continues to push, because he can't be sold a lie anymore. He's not buying the myth that love is earned. He's not drinking the poison of more is the goal in life. He's not performing wholeness. Instead, he is becoming whole. And the world needs more of that. It needs men who know their value isn't conditional, and who lead with gentleness, not just grit, who hold space and not just opinions, and who build belonging, not just a bravado. This is the quiet revolution, and it doesn't need any permission. It does need courage. So, as we close, I want you to remember this: the lie loses its power the moment you stop agreeing with it. You are not only worth what you can get, you are worth knowing. You are worth keeping. You are worth loving. Not someday, but now. Exactly as you are. And the bridge back to yourself, back to connections, back to peace, it's already here. You just have to walk it. You have to walk it with your integrity in your steps and with intimacy in your heart. You're not alone. Welcome home.